Hello, lovers of Black true crime. Let me welcome you to the Noir Nation. If I asked you to name me three Black serial killers, could you do it? What about a Black person that's pulled off a heist of epic proportions? Don't worry, I couldn't either. But being a lover of true crime and all things Black, I decided to combine these two passions into a true crime podcast exploring some of the most intriguing and lesser known criminal masterminds with a melanated leading cast. Each week, I will bring you the stories of some of the most prolific criminals you've never heard of. I'm your host, Renee Davis, and this is the Melanin Mayhem Podcast. Hello and welcome back, Noir Nation. I am back with another juicy episode about a prolific criminal you've never heard of for your listening pleasure. Y'all, evil has no age limit, and this week's Melanin Mayhem Maker started killing at the tender age of 13, y'all. He is also the youngest serial killer in modern American history. And there ain't no sob stories over here, honey. He came from a stable two-parent middle-class upbringing and still turned out to be a goddamn monster. The crazy thing is he should have gotten out of prison for his heinous crimes a short 5 years after his confession. But thankfully, he didn't know how to control his temper while he was in the joint, and time kept on ticking. This week's Melanin Mayhem Maker is Mr. Craig Price, aka the Warwick Slasher. Craig Chandler Price was born October 11th, 1973 in Boston, and he was raised there until around age 5 when his family decided that they needed to leave the metropolitan area of Boston for greener pastures. I'm talking about a better school district and a home where the kids could play outside in the yard. So the family moved to Buttonwood, Rhode Island, which is a bedroom community in Warwick, Rhode Island. His parents were Shirley and John Price, and by all accounts, it literally was a stable middle-class home. His mama did clerical work, and his papa worked for Pepsi. Can't get no better than that unless he was working for Coke. Craig had 2 older siblings, a brother and a sister, and he attended church regularly because mama and them were devout Baptist, baby. Now, Rhode Island is a small state. In Warwick, that community was small too. You know, one of those places where everybody knows everybody else. All the kids attend the same schools from elementary, middle, and graduating from high school together. And around the town, Craig was known as a funny guy. You know, the class clown, the dude that was always cracking jokes. Craig appeared to be a regular, run-of-the-mill teenager. He played sports, smoked a little weed, and hung out with the fellas. He wasn't a loner. He was quite the opposite. He had so many friends, and he was so outgoing and personable. Nothing in his early years gave any indication to the psychopath that was building beneath the surface, other than being accident prone as a youngster, or as I call it, being a boy. However you want to call it works for me. You know, he had some bumps and bruises from doing boy shit, like that time when he was 3 years old and he slipped out the house and got hit by a car. Bet you won't do that shit again. Or that time when he was 7 and got popped upside the head with a rock while he was outside playing. Again, boy shit. A few stitches later and he was back at it. Or that was that time he got that broken collarbone while doing, again, some boy shit. Nothing out of the ordinary, like I said, right? His teachers liked him. They described him as charming, even if he didn't really put that much time and effort into the actual doing of the work part of school. That's why his ass had to repeat the 9th grade. Now, they say he stepped up his drug game from smoking that Mary Jane to taking LSD and drinking. Now, LSD is a bit heavy for me, but you know, hey, to each his own. Tomato, I guess. But either way, he was able to maintain, because we're talking about a kid that's in his early teen years, because he would be behind bars at age 15. Let's get into his first kill, y'all. Now, 27-year-old Rebecca Spencer was the mother of two, living in Warwick with her brother. At the time, however, Rebecca was packing up and she was getting ready to move out of Warwick. She had outgrown the city and was ready to spread her wings. Well, on July 26, 1987, she was hanging out with some of her friends, and after they got through hanging out, she was getting ready to go home, and the friends tried to get her to stay since all her shit was packed up. You know how it goes. Girl, you ain't got to go home. You ain't got no more boxes over there. If you gonna sleep on the sofa, you might as well sleep over here on the sofa. Girl, you finna move and this might be the last time we see you, girl. They just didn't understand how true of a statement that was. Now, Rebecca declined and she was like, I gotta go home. I need to finish up some stuff. I got this move and I need to get ready. And so she did. And that was the last time any of her people saw her again, because that next day, on July 27th, 1987, her brother came home from working the night shift over there at Top Flight Security, and he found his sister in the house dead, stabbed 58 times. You heard me. I said 58 times in her head and her chest with a 10-inch knife from her own damn kitchen. Woo, child. Now, her death was not solved. It remained an open cold case for 2 years. Now, Craig lived in the neighborhood, but he probably wasn't thought of as a suspect because he was only 13 years old, even though he lived 2 houses down the street from the deceased. So the city of Warwick is on edge, y'all. The people that live in that Buttonwood community, man, they locking their doors because a killer is still out here. But for the next 2 years, everything was quiet. No murders, no nothing. So they began to breathe a little easier. And then it was Labor Day weekend. And Marie Bruchot hadn't heard from her 39-year-old daughter, Joan Heaton, or her 2 granddaughters, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa. Now, Marie and Joan, they was tight. That mother and daughter duo, they talked on the phone every day, multiple times a day. So when she didn't hear from her over a holiday weekend, she felt like something was off, something ain't right. And y'all know that mother's intuition. It told her to get in her car and go see about her baby. And she did just that. She jumped in the car with her other daughter and they drive to Joan's house. And when they get there, they see her car in the driveway, but she ain't answering the door. So they let themselves in and found something no mother or sister should ever have to see. Their beloved was lying on the floor dead. The house was a fucking wreck. Shit was everywhere. I'm talking about blood splattered everywhere. Blood soaked sheets over here in a pile. And then when they look through this pile, Lord Jesus, here go Jennifer underneath these bloody sheets. Oh my God. Now they panicking now, right? And they looking for Melissa because where's Melissa? And then they found Melissa. She was in the kitchen, also the victim of an attack, dead on the floor. This begins a nightmare that they just can't wake up from. This entire family is dead from a vicious attack. I'm talking hella vicious, overkill vicious. Joan was stabbed 57 times, hit on her head with something, and then strangled. Jennifer, her oldest daughter, was stabbed 62 times, y'all. And the youngest, the little girl Melissa, she had been hit upside her head with a kitchen stool and then stabbed 30 times. Man, that attack was so brutal that the blade of the knife broke off in her neck. So of course, they call the police frantic, right? And when the police get there, they asses is shook too. Because these are some seasoned cops that we talking about, right? They done been around the block and they done seen some shit. But this crime scene was one for the books, baby, of how to overkill. Warwick, Rhode Island in 1989 had a population of about 85,000 citizens. And when you break it down demographically, it was 91% white, 3% Asian, 2% black, and 5% everybody else. Now here they have a family of white women killed in their home. Oh, no. The perpetrator of this crime was top priority for the Warwick police. Add to that the fact that another white woman had been killed just 2 years prior on the same damn block in the same damn way. The sergeant was probably like, honey, OT is authorized for everybody. Ain't nobody going home. We got a serial killer on the loose. Maybe. The cops figured that the perp had got into the house through a window because there was a screen that was cut. And it looked like the killer came in through that window and stepped on a table that was underneath the window. But the table wasn't sturdy enough to support his weight and it buckled. Probably made enough noise to wake Joan up. She come in, see an intruder in her house. They start fighting. She fighting for her life. Her kids hit a ruckus and then they come to see what's going on and some kind of way kills all three of them with a knife from the kitchen. Nothing is missing from this house, so it's not a burglary. And there are no fingerprints. Like, what the fuck? Whoever this is, they wore gloves, but what they do have is a bloody sock print. Nigga, you up in here barefoot? Like, go ahead and make yourself comfortable, why don't you? So the Warwick police are a little out of their depth, so they need some help, some outsiders to come in and kind of help them set this shit up, right? They partner with a famous forensic scientist named Henry Lee to get a better understanding of how to interpret this crime scene of this heinous act. Now, see, old Henry had worked on the John Benet Ramsey and the O.J. Simpson cases, so he had a little bit of notoriety himself. And the way he saw it, the killer had to have injured himself because there were Band-Aid wrappers on the floor. Dead people don't put bandages on their wound. So, okay, boom, we looking for a man with a bandage on his hand. And then after analyzing that bloody footprint, they could tell that whoever it was wore a size 13 shoe. All right, so we looking for a Bigfoot motherfucker with a hurt hand. Got it. So then the Warwick Police Department gets with the FBI to get a profile for the killer. And y'all, guess what that profile said? Y'all should be kind of used to this by now. It said that it was probably somebody that lived in the neighborhood that may have known the victims, and if it was a local, he might have had the opportunity to watch them and see what their routines were and to see that there also wasn't a man in the house. And this is the kicker for me, y'all, because the neighborhood was predominantly white Irish Catholics. They should be looking for a white male in his teens that had some history with the police. The profiler told the police the question y'all need to be answering is, quote, who is the asshole around here with a cut hand? That's who you need to be looking for, end quote. So that's what they did. Then they started thinking about Rebecca Spencer's murder. The similarities were crazy. Both cases had the attack happening in their own home with a knife from their own kitchen. Both murders clearly overkill. And they were too damn close to each other. Rebecca and Joan and her family, they lived within walking distance of each other. They was probably like, we got a goddamn serial killer on our hands, guys. So now they're armed with a profile and a theory. So the police hit the streets to try to find the man with a Bigfoot and a Band-Aid. Now there's these detectives, Detective Ray Pendergrass and Mark Branwith. They out riding around looking for this mystery man too, right? And while they driving through the city, they see a teenager that they know. Teenager by the name of Craig Price. And they pull up on him. Not because they think he a suspect or anything like that. I mean, he is big. Like at this time, he's like 5'10", 240. But he's a kid. And he black, so, you know, he don't fit the profile. But they pull up on him because they trying to see if he done heard anything. They know he live in the neighborhood, and Detective Pendergrass used to coach him in the neighborhood basketball league. They pull up on him, and they ask him, hey, Craig, you heard anything about them murders? And Craig says, you know, I seen them bodies coming out of the house, but I ain't really seen or heard nothing other than what the news is saying, you know? Now, these detectives know that Craig been in trouble in the past. He had a juvie record, you know, for a little breaking and entering, a few gang-related activities, you know, that they could think of off the top of their head. But he out here in these streets a little bit, so he's probably a good source of information. He might be able to give them a tip of something that could break this case wide open. I mean, that's what they're thinking going in, right? So they sitting there and they kicking the shit with Craig, and Craig is a sociable guy. He don't scare the cops, right? They know him a little bit, and they chit-chatting it up, and the detectives notice that Craig got a bandage on his hand. I mean, they are detectives. I guess they supposed to notice this kind of shit, right? So they asked Craig about it. And our boy Craig is quick with an answer. He said that he had gotten drunk the other night and hurt his hand while he was trying to break into a car over there on Keeley Avenue. Nigga, did you just snitch on yourself? Like, you couldn't have come up with anything better than that, but okay. And that's kind of what the detectives are like. They got their head cocked to the side and their eyes bucked a little bit like, nigga, what? This shit starting to smell a little funny. Craig actually fits the profile if you take away that whole white male part of it. He lives within walking distance of the murders, 2 houses down from Rebecca and around the corner from Joan. He's got a record, and he got a cut hand. But, you know, the detectives, they ain't trying to tip their hand, so they tell Craig, you know, keep an eye out, and then they drive off. They go back to the station to check out Craig's story. No cars were reported being broken into in that area that Craig says that he was in. So, okay, we're going to still do our due diligence, right? They drive over there, walking up and down Keeley Avenue, looking for some broken glass that's going to support Craig's story. They walking and they looking and they looking. They don't see no glass. All right, it's time to go talk to Craig one more time. Now, mind you, it's just these two detectives who believe Craig is a viable suspect. Everybody else is like, nah, son, you reaching now. Mainly, they were thinking that because of Craig's age. To be a perpetrator of this type of crime was unthinkable. And when Rebecca was killed, he would have only have been 13 years old. Man, ain't no way. But those two detectives were not bothered by what everybody else thought. They felt that he was the one, and they would continue on their own to prove it. They took a deeper dive into Craig's background. For a 15-year-old, the little nigga had been busy. Burglary, breaking and entering, drug, gang activities, and he had a short fuse. He was known to pop off. The cops had been to his home on several different occasions due to all his shenanigans. He also had a habit of looking through the windows of houses he ain't live in. Oh, Craig was a little peeping Tom. Little Craig ain't so damn innocent as he seemed now. I am a mother to a son that looked like a grown man from afar when he was around 15 years old too. He was a big boy. Boy being the operative word. And me, much like everybody else in Warwick except for these two detectives, would be of that mindset that a 13 to 15-year-old just ain't capable of singular murder, much less serial murder, right? Well, Aaliyah told us a long time ago, age ain't nothing but a number, throwing down ain't nothing but a thing. And baby, our boy Craig ain't at all what he seems. This man-child is indeed a killer of the serial variety, hiding in plain sight for now. The detectives ask his mama and daddy to bring him down to the station because they have a few questions for Craig. The parental unit is like, bet, shit, our son ain't got nothing to hide. We on our way. And they do. They bring him down to the station and they stay with him during the interview that goes on for a little while, but don't really turn up no new information because Craig is sticking to his story. He don't know why y'all didn't see no glass. Maybe they cleaned it up. I don't know. So then they ask Craig to take a polygraph. His parents is like, shit, my son ain't got nothing to hide. Run that shit. He takes a polygraph. Then, of course, the polygraph results come back to say that old Craig is lying about something. But y'all know a polygraph saying that you a lie is not enough. So Craig's parents, they take him home and the detectives keep on digging. This time, when they go back and talk to the community, they managed to drop Craig's name in, to get the juices flowing. Guess what? The community started talking about Craig. Some of his school friends tell them that, back when they was in middle school, when that Rebecca lady got killed, Craig, being the clown that he was talking about that he killed her. But we ain't believe that nigga. That nigga was just capping, right? But we went with the shit. We even called him the Buttonwoods Killer. Remember, that's the neighborhood they live in. So the detectives are like, shit, okay, now we got something to work with. You done confessed to a crime. Add to the fact that you wear a size 13 shoe, the same size as that bloody sock print. They going back to Craig's house. We got some more talking to do. But this time they go back with a search warrant. Baby, mom and them are understandably pissed at this point because they served that motherfucking warrant at the crack of dawn. They still was in their beds trying to get in that last little piece of sleep in before it was time to get up, and instead they wake up to beating on their doors and the police there ready to search and tear their house apart. But while they were pissed off and sitting here nervously on the couch while the police in here doing what they do, guess what your boy Craig was doing? This unbothered little nigga went back to sleep. Sir, if you don't get your ass up, now look here, you the reason that they in my goddamn house. As a parent, I'm telling you, his ass wouldn't have been able to sleep while all this bullshit was going on in my house. They'd have had my ass on an assault charge because I'd have been tagging their head something serious. Craig's so nonchalant about this whole situation, you kind of don't know what to think. Maybe this really is a wild goose chase, right? Yeah, no. The cops found a bag in the shed behind the house. It was like a Christmas gift to them. This bag had bloody gloves and bloody clothes and bloody ass fucking knives. Sir! Yeah, this a child we dealing with here. Because by now, All this shit should have been gone and destroyed. You do not leave your murder weapons and all the bloody clothes and shit in a bag in a shed like you leave your dirty clothes on the floor for your mama to pick up and take it to wash. That's what happens when kids do shit that ain't kid shit. So they marched right on back in that house and woke Craig ass up and arrested his ass for murder. Nigga. Now I know his mama and daddy had to be beside themselves because we stand up and we stand by our kids. Most parents, that is. We ain't trying to believe that they could ever do some real fuckery, right? But man, what a wake-up call this had to be for the Prices. So the police, they take Craig in for processing and for some more questioning. And his mama and daddy are right there with him, but no lawyer. And that's probably because of the laws at the time. The detectives started questioning him. It didn't take long for Craig to cop to all that shit.
I ran into the kitchen. On top of the refrigerator was a knife. And I just killed him. How did you hurt him? When I was stabbing, I guess I got careless or something. And then I stabbed my own finger.
I mean, the nigga sounds so calm, like he is discussing the boring science homework he had to do. Like, it's unbelievable. There's no shame. There's no remorse. And then he is describing in vivid detail with sound effects what the fuck he did to Joan and her 2 daughters. The shit was so graphic that his daddy had to leave the room. Not just leave the room, run out the room to the restroom where he threw up yesterday's dinner. His father was so disgusted, so aghast that he couldn't even go back into the room with his son. As usual, Craig's black mother had to sit there with her black son and listen and be horrified and supportive at the same damn time. Too bad at the same damn time. Okay, Fuchsia. This woman couldn't do nothing but cry. I can't imagine the pain and the hurt and the disappointment and the disgust and the anguish that woman went through that day and every day afterwards. That was her baby, her youngest heartbeat. A killer. He killed the neighbors. Not just a killer, he's a fucking serial killer. Like, I ain't trying to say that we can justify murder, but, if it was self-defense, he got caught up and somebody was trying to do something to him. But just killing for the sake of fucking killing and just doing this shit in the neighborhood and taking out a whole family? Lord have mercy. That's a hard pill to swallow for any parent. Now, Craig's story is that he broke in to steal from the house at first. But when he broke in, the table broke, and then Joan heard him, and they got to tussling, and he strangled her till she was unconscious. And then the girls came running in, and he grabbed a knife out the kitchen and went to work on her oldest daughter, just stabbing her. Then he say that she bit him. And this nigga say he turned around and bit her right back and showed them the spot on him that she had bit him and told her that he had bitten her on her face. Like, I can't even. And then he said Melissa, the young one, she ran in the kitchen to try to get to the phone to call 911. So he run behind her and pick up a stool, a fucking kitchen stool, and start beating her with that mug. And when she was down, he just started stabbing her over and over and over again. And when he was done, he went back to Joan and finished her off by stabbing her repeatedly until he felt like she was dead. Then they asked him about Rebecca, and he confessed to that murder too. He said that the day before he murdered her, her brother had called him a nigger. That's with the hard ER. Craig said he couldn't calm down from that whole episode, and he went over to handle Rebecca's brother. But he wasn't there. Rebecca was. So she caught all his rage, even though she hadn't did a goddamn thing to him. Now, whether or not any of this is true about the calling of the nigger and whatever, but this is Craig's story about why he killed both times. Racism was the reason, or what he perceived as racism from a white person that made him so mad that he had to kill them. I don't know if I buy this story because when I, again, look at the demographics of where he lived, Rhode Island It's all white all the time. And him and nobody else can make me believe that he only got caught up with some racist bullshit twice in his little young life. Nah, bruh. If racing is truly the reason why you kill, then there should be a whole lot more dead white people, right? I digress. I think it was more so you saw those women around the hood. You knew that there wasn't a man around because Rebecca's brother worked at night and Joan didn't have no man in the picture. And you snuck out your house in the dead of night, snuck in those women's houses and killed them. And it's just crazy because Craig is only 15 years old. What the entire fuck? And guess what else? When Craig's little friends hear about his arrest, baby, they was outside the police station protesting like a motherfucker. You can see it if you go look up Craig's name. The local news station has a lot of media on Mr. Craig, and they've got footage of Craig being escorted out by the police, and the people are outside shouting, "No, you got the wrong guy. He's just a kid. The cops are racist. Free my nigga Craig." All that shit. And Craig, he walking and giving them head nods and smirking at the crowd and shit, talking about he'll be out soon. When you look at him, he looks nothing like a boy that is being charged with a murder he did not commit. There are no tears. He is not looking sad. Baby, somebody charged me with 4 counts of murder. You gonna have to drag me because I ain't gonna even be able to walk. But not our boy Craig. And this is a lesson in why we should not blindly follow our peers or jump on a bandwagon until you hear the facts. Because they were out there going hard for their friend. And then they find out all this evidence that they had against Craig and a confession. They had to swallow all that shit. Free my nigga Craig. Craig killed 2 women and 2 girls. You still want us to free your nigga Craig? At the same time, now, don't get me wrong, I am not saying that his friends shouldn't have supported him. I mean, even the most prolific criminals have people that love them. Whether it's family or friends, as humans, we can't help who we know and who we have in our heart. But there is a thing called strong, silent support. SSS, if you will, just without a check. You can display strong, silent support by accepting collect calls. You can display strong, silent support by putting money on a book. You can display strong, silent support by sending letters, telling them that you're praying for them and to stay positive and they will have a chance to make things right. All these things can be done without fanfare. You ain't got to go on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, none of that shit and free my nigga Craig. You can stay behind the scenes and be supportive silently. Because when you are blindly and loudly displaying support for these people, that shit can end up biting you in the ass. You know, first thing I think of is Cosby, Puff Daddy. You know, these people who have done some heinous shit. And then when it first came out, folks was like, no, gold diggers this and trying to get money that and blah, 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 blah. And then when the facts of the case came out, it's like, ooh, egg on your face. Y'all, when I say this case went fast, I'm talking 0 to 1,000 quick. Now check this timeline out. Joan and her daughters were killed Labor Day weekend. Remember, because her mama said she hadn't heard from them all weekend, and on that Monday she went to the house to check on them. That Monday was September 4th, 1989. Now, Craig was questioned, polygraphed, and arrested in the span of 2.5 weeks. And on September 21st, 1989, 16 short days after his crime, Craig was standing in front of a judge pleading guilty to the murders of all 4 victims. Every state has different laws. We have to remember that. Because I know right now y'all like, what the fuck? Where his lawyer at? This too fast. In Atlanta, you ain't even made it to pretrial yet in 16 days. Much less in front of a judge finna get some sentencing. But I have to remind you, 1, it's 1989. And to quote from the great Slick Rick, once upon a time not long ago, when people wore pajamas and lived life slow, when laws were stern and justice stood, and people were behaving like they ought to good, there lived a boy who was misled. Y'all, in 1989, the prevailing thought was that children did not commit murder. They did pranks. The laws on the books, they reflected that viewpoint. And the law at that time said that minors didn't have jury trials. Minors were not tried as adults if they were less than 16 years old when they committed a crime. Craig confessed to this crime just weeks before his 16th birthday. So there would be no trial. This shit would go straight to family court, and sentencing, whatever it was, would terminate on his 21st birthday. Now the judge and the prosecutor knew that Craig was on some sociopath type of shit. Because when they was in front of him, Craig was unbothered as fuck. There was no remorse. And if he wasn't sorry for his crimes at 15, when he got out in 5 years, he would be a definite threat to society. So the judge did a little bit of legal trickery. You know, we done talked about this before in previous cases, that old legal trickery. So the judge said that, yeah, you're gonna get out. But he also mandated that Craig had to participate in mandatory intensive treatment therapy to make sure that he would be ready to rejoin society when his time was up. And they made that a part of the sentencing. What they were going to do is they were going to bring in some heavy hitter shrinks to design a course of therapy to diagnose and treat Craig. Now 15-year-old Craig was like, shit, whatever, bet, let's roll. But the people of Rhode Island would not. Please believe that they got busy changing that law to allow minors to be charged as adults when they committed serious crimes. And they did. They changed the law. However, that would be for all crimes committed by minors after the law passed. It wouldn't be retroactive. Craig was still gonna skate on their ass. Now wait a minute, Renee. It's 2024. Why he still locked up if he was supposed to get out when he turned 21? Let me tell you, New War Nation. So this nigga state property now, right? He's going off to prison for his birthday in 1989. And he started his prison time in Rhode Island at the Rhode Island Youth Training School. Aw, what a cute name for a prison for baby criminals. And while Craig is there, he is a model prisoner, they say. So good that he is given privileges and shit. The serial killer is a trustee, y'all. They letting this nigga mentor the other troubled youth. If that ain't the blind leading the blind. They even let this nigga shoot a rap video talking about killing and shooting up motherfuckers. What? Man, when them white folks found that shit out, they went ape shit. Oh, hell no. They got to raising all kind of hell. And then it came out that Craig hadn't done that mandatory therapy either. This nigga had outright refused to do it. You see, his attorney, yeah, he finally got one at some point. His attorney told him that the state was gonna use those intensive therapy sessions with the super shrinks against his ass when it came time for him to be released. You see, as a part of the therapy, Craig was gonna have to talk about the murders and what his motivations were and all that shit. And then the experts would do psychiatric assessments on him, right? And lawyers said, you know, once they give you a clinical diagnosis, the courts are gonna use that shit against you to hold you in a psychiatric hospital way past your 21st birthday, honey. And it's already a law on the books. See, the court-appointed psychiatrist had already said that Craig had a level of unusual homicidal fury going on. So Craig listened to his lawyer and was like, fuck you. I'm gonna do my 5 years and then I'm gonna skate on out the door on y'all ass. Y'all can think I'm evil all you want, but what you will not do is be able to label me mental. Craig, no, baby. It ain't gonna be that easy. Because over the next 5 years, they kept bringing him back in front of the judge to try to make him do that therapy. Every time they took him in front of the judge, he declined. Because Craig felt like that they were just trying to threaten him and that it was racially motivated. Y'all know our boy Craig, everything breaks down to racial. And it might have been some truth to that. So Craig decided what he was going to do was lay back in the cut and keep a low profile. But the citizens of Rhode Island were not having none of that. Finally, right before he turned 21, they brought him back in court one last time to try to get him to honor that deal. As usual, Craig was like, no. So the state said, okay, this is what we gonna do. We gonna charge you with civil contempt of court since you didn't fulfill your end of the sentence, and this is gonna add some more time on your sentence. Now mind you, all of this went down June 27th, 1994. This is like 4 months before Craig turns 21. And so they told him, you know, we're gonna hit you with this civil contempt, but if you go ahead and go through with the counseling, we'll suspend the sentence. So boom. Craig got a civil contempt of court charge. Notice I said a civil and not a criminal contempt of court charge. I think that's really interesting, right? They gave him a year to do in the adult prison. And I guess Craig went back to the baby prison and thought about that shit for a minute. And he had a change of heart, or more like he came up with a plan to try to get over on the court, because that next month he told him, you know what, no worries, I'll do the therapy, bring that shit on. But the therapist said, you in here playing in my face. He just lying, Your Honor. He's saying anything. He is not being truthful. He is not fulfilling the spirit of the sentence. So the court was like, nope, not today. So now, since you're going to play in our face instead of a civil contempt of court charge, now we're going to hit your ass with a criminal contempt of court charge. Criminal carries a whole lot more weight than a civil. And Craig was like, shit, run it. Now, mind you, at this point, he's still at the youth facility. And the courts is getting that book together, getting it ready to throw it at his ass. Now, in 1993... this is what we're talking about now. I don't think that it's a stretch to say that Craig was pissed because they were trying to stack that deck against him. And you deserved it. But he's also still immature and aggressive and full of all of those raging adolescent testosterone and all the rest of the hormones, and he ain't got no outlet. All his plans to this point has been that he's gonna make these 5 years and then he's gonna get the fuck out, right? Now all that shit is fucked to hell because the court ain't with none of the shit. So October rolls around. Now, mind you, this is his birthday month, the month he should be getting ready to get out. And now that's no longer on the table. And to say that Craig was not pleased would be the understatement of the century. And baby, he brought in October with a motherfucking bang. Craig said, fuck it all. Fuck the therapy, fuck the judge, fuck them doctors, fuck me wanting to talk about these murders. Y'all want to keep me in here? I'm going to give y'all a whole reason to keep me in here. And Craig went the fuck off. This nigga beat up 2 inmates. He tried to escape. He beat up the COs that tried to restrain him. So of course, here come a shitload of additional charges to be adding time onto his sentence. So those 2 contempt of court charges for not completing that court order therapy, he get a 10-year bid and a 7-year bid added to his sentence. That's gonna put him out in 2011. For the attempted escape, he got another year. So that puts him out in 2012. And for beating up those 2 inmates, he got another 3 years. So that's giving him a 2015 release date, right? So okay, you done aged out of the baby prison and it is off to adult prison you go, sir, to the Cranston Correctional Institute in Rhode Island. And he settles in for a little bit, but then in 1998, he beat up a prison guard, caught another sentence. Okay, now he up to 2016 before he can get released. Craig can't stay out of trouble. In 2002, he stabs an inmate with a pen. By now, he's got 36 infractions in Rhode Island, and he's basically infamous in the prison system. Because remember, it's a small state, right? And his notoriety is really causing the prison system a lot of mayhem, right? So what they do is they decide that they're going to ship him to another state. They have a prisoner swap program, right? So they put a bid out to see who would like to take this nigga. And this nigga must have been a straight up menace because only 2 states was willing to take him. New Mexico and Florida. Out of like 25 states. Damn, how much mayhem you gotta cause to make a prison not want to take you. But nevertheless, Florida was like, we'll do it. And in 2004, he transferred to the Santa Rosa Correctional Institute in Milton, Florida. He is settled down for a little bit. No real issues. A little popping off at the mouth here and there, but nothing really bad, right? Until July 29th, 2009, when old Craig cranked that shit up one more time. He beat up an inmate and stabbed a CO. And they hit that ass with an assault charge, a battery charge, a resisting charge, a contraband charge. And when all is said and done, he gets another 10 years added on to his sentence. So now 2026 is his release date. But here's the kicker. Yeah, he's getting more time added on to his sentence, but he still got that good behavior clock ticking. So in 2017, they transferred him to the Swanee Correctional Prison in Live Oak, Florida. What's crazy is that if Craig had been able to keep a level head instead of going ham, a good lawyer, maybe not even a good lawyer, a lawyer could have gotten him out. Think about it. They said up until that point, he was a model prisoner. The law was on his side because he was a minor when he committed the crime. All he needed to do was sit still and be quiet. Y'all remember, just like grandma used to tell you to do in church. Sit your ass down, don't say nothing. But Craig was a kid and he hadn't had the chance to mature enough to see the bigger picture. And that's probably what the court system was banking on. And they were right. They applied just enough pressure to make Craig's pipes burst. But check it, all is not lost. There is still light at the end of this tunnel, all thanks to time off for good behavior. So even though he has more time being tacked on with these additional sentences, he is still earning 2 days off for every good day. So let's see what happens next. We're going to fast forward to April 2017. At this point, with his good behavior time, Craig is less than a year away from getting out of prison. This nigga finna be a free man. 2017. He still got plenty of life ahead of him because he's only 44 years old at this point. And that's plenty of time to get out and have a second chance as a productive member of society. Now, around this time, Craig has played up a little medical issue. He claimed he got some problems with his knee and he needed a wheelchair, right? So they give him a wheelchair. And my thing is when you see a nigga in a wheelchair, you think, maybe he's disabled or something, right? What you do think is that the threat level ain't that high because this nigga in a wheelchair. Okay, Craig, maybe time has slow walked your ass down and now you ready to be acting all civilized and shit. No, not our boy Craig. So what does he do? This nigga shanks a fellow inmate, a man named Joshua Davis. No relation. This motherfucker cut Joshua ass in strips with a 5-inch homemade blade. They say Craig went in Joshua's cell and went to work, baby. Dude, some kind of way was able to get out his cell, but Craig was still on him. Said that nigga tackled him from the back and just kept on stabbing. But baby, Joshua Davis had a praying grandmother, and she must have had a main line to Jesus because his life was spared even though he had stab wounds everywhere. I'm talking to his chest, his head, he had 4 in his back, he had 2 stabs just millimeters from his spine, both at the top and at the bottom. And Craig, he catches yet another charge that would keep him in prison. Unlike Shawshank, in 2017, Craig, the prisons got cameras, bruh, and they are recording, and they recorded you. They recorded you trying to end that nigga life. Damn, Craig. Free your mind, Craig. Craig goes to court in August of 2017, and after a bunch of delays and back and forths and whatnot, he does finally get the case to work through the system, and he ends up with a 25-year sentence. Like, how you go from less than a year to go to now gotta do 25 more? That shit crazy. It's like being 12 payments from paying off your house or from paying off your car and then taking out another loan on the shit. But again, he was young and I think he was also institutionalized. That's just my thought. After he caught that last 25-year bid, they transferred him to another prison in Florida, the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. Now, y'all, Craig is still over there at the Union Correctional Institute. And as of me recording this podcast, his release date is October 19, 2043. At that time, he'll be 70 years old. Ooh, baby, talk about institutionalized. Craig wasn't doing nothing but sabotaging himself. I mean, he had less than a year to go. Why would you do something stupid, Craig? I'll tell you why. Because Craig don't know shit about the outside world today. This man grew up in the prison system and it's all he knows. So I think it's arguably okay to say that that's where he's most comfortable. Y'all remember that old man in Shawshank? When he got his parole, he was lost out there in the free world. He had name recognition and respect when he was behind bars. And that must be how Craig felt as well. Where he gonna go? Back to Rhode Island? Hell no. They'd have been waiting on his ass at the state line with pitchforks and burning crosses. Yeah, I know I'm telling the truth. And while there is an expiration date on his current sentence, I'm relatively sure that something is going to happen between now and then, and Craig will rack up a little bit more time to ensure that when he leaves this world, he will be residing behind prison bars. Okay, y'all, that is the story of Craig Price, a prolific serial killer and holder of the title of the youngest serial killer in modern American history. That's a Black history factoid that you'll never see. As always, I hope that you found this week's episode interesting and informative. I try to do my best to entertain. If you like what you heard, go ahead and drop me a review wherever you get your podcast from and tell me all about it. And then what I need you to do, I need you to tell a friend. I need you to tell your coworkers and the people over at the church and the people in your youth group, and put me in the group chat too. Tell all your friends to join me over here at the New War Nation. Over here at Melanin Mayhem, we want to hear from you. You can find us on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Look for Melanin Mayhem Podcast, Melanin Mayhem Pod, or Melanin Mayhem PC. Once you put Melanin Mayhem in, it should pop me up. And if you know of a melanated baddie that you want me to do an episode on, you can reach me at melaninmayhempodcast@gmail.com. Okay, guys, you know what I say. Until next week, please be safe. Please stay vigilant. And remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Namaste, New Orleans Nation. It's one love, and your girl Renee is out of here.
Bye.